Hello, Lainey.
Hi, Grace. How are you?
Good. Even better now that we are on for our Writers to Watch for November.
Yes, thank you to everyone who's joining in. We are so excited. I physically cannot believe that it is November. It's insane. But it is, and we're here with four great authors tonight. I think we have a great discussion ahead of us, a little bit of everything. We have some nonfiction, fiction. It'll be a really fun evening. So today we're going to hear from Claire Oshetsky, Cynthia D'Aprix Sweeney, Peter Stark, Gillian McAllister. So we're so excited to have them all, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. A few quick housekeeping points. Grace, you want to tell them about our December episode that's going to be coming? That's on the 4th, exactly a month from today.
Oh, that was good timing.
Yeah.
Um, so we have a fantastic list of authors. I think we have the image to show you, so we can pull that right up. Gorgeous. We have Rainbow Rowell, Kate Quinn, Willie Vlotton, and Jocelyn Jackson. We are so excited. It's going to be a really, really fun night, and that's going to be at our normal time of 7 p.m., unlike tonight. So we are just really, really pumped. It'll be our last Writers to Watch of 2025, which is hard to believe. And it'll be 3 years in January since we started this program. So thank you all for joining us every month. We really appreciate it. And we'll
I
see
can't
you
believe it.
next month.
I know. And tonight we are starting our November one off with a bang. Reminder, if you are subscribed on Crowdcast, you can get the ebooks, e-galleys early. So that's a fun perk if you are a member of our Crowdcast group. Be sure to sign up and you'll get those reminders. Also, Crowdcast is nice because you get reminders of when we're going live or when new episodes are added. But of course, if you're watching on Facebook or even in the replay, like you can like us on Facebook and you'll get updates there as well. So that, oh, and then just quickly, I wanted to throw a shout out. I know a lot of things are changing and how we order books and things like this. And so we're putting out a very special email every 2 weeks with top books on sale that week. So just make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter. And you'll also hear all of the cool events we have in our newsletter if you're subscribed. So we won't inundate you with a lot of emails, I promise. Join us there, and on our librarylovefest.com website, you can sign up. So without further ado, let's get into some great books and some great authors. What do you say, Grace?
I say we do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So we're gonna start off today with Claire Oshetsky. Come on down. Hi,
Hi.
Claire.
Hello.
Hi. I'm gonna get your book, lovely book jacked up. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for inviting me.
Good. I'm so happy to have you. I'm gonna do a brief bio and then I can't wait to hear more about Evil Genius.
Okay.
Okay, Claire Oshetsky is the author of Poor Dear and Chouette, which was a PEN Faulkner Award nominee, the winner of the William Saroyan International Prize for Writing, and a finalist for the Northern California Book Award and the Barbellion Prize. They live in Santa Cruz, California, and Evil Genius, your next book, comes out February 17th, and which won't be very far away. Unfortunately, I mean, it's crazy that it's almost 2026. But we're very excited for this book. I have to tell you, I could not stop thinking about this book. It was so good. So I can't wait for you to tell our listeners more about it. I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks very much. That's very kind of you. Yeah, Evil Genius is about a 19-year-old woman, Celia Dent. It takes place in 1974 in San Francisco. And Celia happens to be married to a older man who is not kind to her on any level. He's he's bad news, but he has managed to convince her that he's good for her, and she's pretty happy with her life until a day at work when she hears some office gossip about a woman who has been killed, murdered in a love tryst gone awry. And she didn't know the woman very well, but she's kind of energized. Like her brain starts popping in new directions, that the whole idea of someone killing for love or dying for love awakens something new in her. And she starts to think maybe her own marriage could use a little love and death action. So that's the setup. And into her life comes a empowering female mythic beast called the Crab Queen. And if you're familiar with my other books, I do like to have a mythic element or a beastly avatar of female empowerment that guides my characters, my protagonists, to self-actualizing and embracing their power and turning their lives around for the better. And in this case, it's the Crab Queen, and I love her. She's kind of crabby. She's got a lot of potent energy, and she kind of hovers over the story like a wild guardian angel, where wild things keep happening to Celia at a quicker and quicker pace. So even though she's very gentle and very sweet, it turns out that she gets pulled through to a much better place in the end, where her bad husband is dispatched and justice is served, and she is able to go on to a very happy life, one hopes. So that's basically the story. My goal in writing this story was really, I really wanted people to have fun reading it and to just be in love with Celia Dent. You know, even though she's got some sketchy ideas about love and death matters, she deserves a better life, and I just really wanted people to root for her all the way to the very end, and to celebrate her freedom from a bad life. It's also true that I had a second goal in mind, where I was thinking it was about time for me to think about my own experience with abuse. And, I was just really thinking, I wanted to ask myself the question, why did I stay in a bad relationship for 8 years? And why do women do that? So I put some elements in the novel that are very true to my own life. There's scenes that are exactly what happened to me. For some reason, I feel very comfortable putting real stuff in fiction versus just saying this is true, this is, or writing memoir. And I also gave Celia the opportunity to ask herself and to tell the reader, this is why I stayed. And that was a layer of seriousness, I guess, in what is very much a lighthearted book, but also I hope will allow people to think about these things for themselves and make it a satisfying read as well as just a fun romp. That's Evil Genius. Thanks.
Well, thank you for sharing. I'm so
Sure.
glad you said that about her ability to be very likable, and like she's pushing things to the edge, and you're like, you feel like you're on this journey with her, and it is just completely, there's this fun aspect of it as well. And I love like a sardonic character. Like her voice is so great, and it comes through. But I went back to look at notes for this, and I just found myself rereading because I just enjoyed it so much. And I really hope people spend time with Celia. I have this great quote by Ainsley Hogarth, author of Mother Thing. In Evil Genius, Claire Oshetsky gives us the dark, brutal, and often hilarious voice of a character we see often, but so rarely get to hear from. The woman in the mid-20th century potboiler. Campy and exciting, surreal and sad. This is another stunner from a truly original writer. And that's a really great quote. There's a lot of great quotes coming in. I wondered if you could talk a little, because I think a fun part is Celia's job at the phone company. Can you tell them a little bit about her job?
Sure. She's a billing operator at the phone company. And I said it in 1974 because that was a time when this was kind of a local job that people would come in to pay their bills in the same office where they were talking to the billing collectors upstairs. And it was possible to interact with people that you just disconnected their telephone. And that does happen where there's a conflict in the story that becomes very important to Celia and her journey. And I just like the idea of her needing to respond in a good way and kind of be trapped with this headset that she's listening to people's problems all the time. And that she just really decides she deserves better. And yeah, and just I said it in the 70s as well, because it's a time when the phone was all there was, right? If you disconnect someone's telephone, they can't get a job. There's nowhere to call them back. So this job is pretty powerful, and it's also very stultifying. And I was just interested in that contrast and thought it would be an interesting way to frame her life, that she's got this bad job and also this bad marriage, and she's just trying to do the best she can.
Yeah, a great juxtaposition of this like outside looking in, kind of where the power resides. Yeah, it was great. Well, thank you. We will hear more from Claire in just a few minutes, but we're gonna move on to our next author. So welcoming on Grace to introduce Cynthia.
Yes, I'm excited to welcome on Cynthia D'Aprix Sweeney.
Coming.
No,
Sorry
how
for
are
the late
you?
arrival.
No.
Like,
How are
where's my
you?
mouse?
Oh, well, I'm so excited to have you here. Cynthia and I met, what was it, like 2-3 weeks? Very recently
That's
in the
very
office.
recently. Yeah. a
Yeah,
few
which
weeks
is
ago.
so fantastic. I got to hear you talk a bit about the book, and we talked about our shared hometown. It was lovely.
That's right. That's right. It was fun.
Yes, it was great. So I'm going to read your bio before we talk about Lake Effect, which is on sale March 3rd. So Cynthia D'Aprix Sweeney is the author of the instant New York Times bestselling novels The Nest, named a Best Book of the Year by People, The Washington Post, and NPR, and Good Company, a Read with Jenna selection. She has been a guest on Today, Late Night with Seth Meyers, and NPR's All Things Considered. Her work has been translated into more than 28 languages, and The Nest is in development as a limited series with AMC Studios. Cynthia holds an MFA from the Bennington Writing Seminars. She and her husband live in New York City. So Cynthia, thank you for being here. We're just so excited to have you, and I'm gonna just let you take it over and talk about Lake Effect.
Okay, great. Well, I have to address the swollen half of my left face, or I'll be thinking about it the whole time I'm speaking. But I had to have an emergency dental procedure this afternoon, so I can watch it getting bigger here. But so you don't have to adjust your screens. But the Novocaine is worn off, but the Xanax hasn't. So you can also ask me anything later, and I will answer it. I'm also really always excited to talk to librarians. Like most writers, I think libraries and librarians were so important to me growing up. And the very first place I was allowed to ride my bike by myself was our little local Brighton branch. So that was just a big, huge part of my life, and continues to be. I am really thrilled to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about Lake Effect, which in some way that I can't even entirely explain seems to me like a book I was waiting until the right moment to write. I always knew that I wanted to write a book that took place in my hometown of Rochester, New York, because I think it's a really interesting and certainly underrepresented place in literature. And I always kind of knew that, not coincidentally, that book would at least start in the 1970s, because 1977 was the last year I lived in Rochester full time. I left Rochester the second I could, the second I had a college diploma and 20 bucks in my pocket. But growing up in the 70s, when there was so much change in the world, and the sexual revolution and birth control and the feminist movement and rising divorce rates and rising drug use, that seemed to me as a kid like it was very, very far away. Like I lived in a more protected, very insular community until all of a sudden I didn't, until all of a sudden parents of the friends of mine were getting divorced, which when I was a kid just seemed like the worst possible thing that could happen to your family. It was petrifying to me. And much like one of the characters in the book, the younger sister in one of the families, I sort of became like a detective looking for signs of divorce anywhere, and, you know, terrified that it was going to end up on my doorstep. And I think that as I started to get a little older and in my teen years, and families breaking apart became more common, I really became preoccupied with what the adults in your life owe the people around them. So I really struggled with a sense that a grown-up who had a responsibility to a spouse and a responsibility to children would make a selfish choice. And I thought about it all the time. And of course, as I became an adult and started to engage in my own relationships, I realized that when you have competing desires in your life, when you have the misfortune, perhaps, or the great fortune, perhaps, of falling in love with someone who you are not married to, and you have to decide where your loyalty lies and whether or not you're going to choose personal happiness over family happiness, that those questions are complicated and nuanced, and the answer isn't always obvious. And that was really the driving force behind writing this book about two families, where the adults in the two different families fall in love and have to decide what they're going to do and what the consequences are for their kids moving through the decades. And you know, I think that if my first book, The Nest, was about what siblings and parents owe one another, and then the next book, Good Company, was about how chosen relationships work in our lives, I think that Lake Effects takes on all of those themes, but then it's contextualized in a really changing society. So what happens when the mores of society suddenly change and previously closed doors swing open? When options that were once forbidden are suddenly possible? What do we do when our own desires threaten the security of the people we love? So I think that this book is really an accumulation of all the things about family that preoccupy me and interest me as a writer. And it was also just really fun to set a book in my hometown, and really fun to write a book, and takes place mostly in the 70s. And I love Rochester, and I loved writing about the food and the culture and the devotion to the Buffalo Bills, despite everyone's years and years of heartbreak, and the weird white hot dogs on the barbecue. And then surprisingly, I really loved writing about that town's very, very Midwestern heart, which was one of the things I was dying to escape as a 22-year-old. So that's, it was really a joy. And I hope that comes through on the pages. And I can't wait. I can't wait for you all to read it.
Well, thank you so much. I think that was such a good encapsulation of this book, which does so much so well. We have a comment in the chat from Kim that says, "You are spot on, virtually nodding with you about the 70s vibe." So thank you so much. I do have a quote I wanted to read by Shelby Van Pelt, author of Remarkably Bright Creatures, which we loved. She says, "Lake Effect pulled me right into its messy, intimate web of neighbors, lovers, mothers, and daughters. Cynthia D'Aprix Sweeney brings warmth and humor to this nuanced exploration of betrayal and its echoes, drawing each other's perspectives so finely that I could swear I know these people. I could not put it down." And that is exactly how I felt reading it too. You really do a fantastic job giving these full developed characters in a fully developed place. And I just feel like a lot of people are really going to resonate with it, as did I. So And
I hope
I
so,
will
yeah.
I will be asking you a question later about the title. So I just wanted to put that out there to
I'm ready.
Perfect. So thank you so much. Now I'm gonna actually pass this off back to Lainey.
Yes. And just to say, I loved Lake Effect, and I don't know anything about Rochester, but I loved it so much.
Well, you do now.
I learned a lot. I
Yes.
did. I did. Thank you. And then we're gonna welcome back on Peter Stark. Come on, Peter.
I'm coming.
Come on.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
How you doing?
Good, good. I'm just so pleased to be here, and thank you, all you HarperCollins people, for putting this together. And I'm really honored to be on this panel with these marvelous authors. And it's so great to have librarians who are key to our world. To
Oh, thank you for
I
saying
hope
that.
to help them any way I can.
I know that they're so excited to hear from you too. I thank you for being here, and it's going to be great. So I'm going to do a bio, and then we're going to hear more about your book. So The Lost Cities of El Norte comes out April 14th, 2026. Peter Stark is an adventurer and historian. He is the author of Astoria, Astor and Jefferson's Lost Pacific Empire, a New York Times bestseller, and a PEN USA Literary Award finalist. A former correspondent for Outside Magazine, Stark has also been published in Smithsonian, The New Yorker, The New York Times Magazine, and Men's Journal. His other books include Young Washington, How Wilderness and War Forged America's Founding Father, a finalist for the George Washington Book Prize, and Gallop Toward the Sun, Tukimesh and William Henry Harrison's Struggle for the Destiny of a Nation. Based in Montana, he and his family have also lived in Mozambique and Brazil. And we're here to hear all about this thrilling history book, Velocities of El Norte, and I will let you take it away.
Well, thanks so much, Lainey, for that introduction. And yeah, you hit the points that I'm not a novelist. That I write something quite different. Technically, I think you'd call it narrative nonfiction history. And I started out decades ago, traveling the world as a young man and writing adventure travel articles about dicey places and sketchy undertakings, like kayaking down an uncharted river in Africa with, you had the hippos, you had the crocs, you had the waterfalls, you had it all. And then I decided, I could get killed doing something like this. And by then I'd had a young family, and I started writing about historical figures who mostly explorers who pushed themselves way deep into the unknown and to extremes and pushed over the edge, so to speak. And there were two things that really fascinated me in particular, like how these explorers responded psychologically to the extreme stresses of the unknown, and how these explorers and native people who lived in these so-called unknown places uh, made first contact with each other and how that interaction unfolded. So I've really focused on those. And I'd known about the Coronado expedition for decades and wrote about it a bit 15 years ago. But it was such a crazy story, and it had so many dimensions, and it was not really very well understood by the American public. So I decided to undertake a whole book. And then especially when I realized, how many first person accounts and existing journals and eyewitness accounts and letters there are, that really made it a, a rich vein to mine in terms of vivid detail and all those things that you need to bring these stories alive. So, I kind of, to capsulize this, the story, you have to remember that it's almost 100 years before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock, and that's where the story begins. And at that point, the greatest exploring expedition the New World has ever seen launches out from Mexico City to the north. There are 2,000 soldiers and Aztecan warriors. There are Spanish knights in suits of armor. There are banners waving, bugles blowing, 1,000 horses, 5 or 10,000 cows and sheep to feed the expedition. And at its head is Coronado, who's wearing a golden suit of armor and a gilded helmet with a big plume bobbing on the top of his helmet. And their aim is to find the seven cities of gold, the fabled seven cities of gold in the unknown lands to the north. Um, they were clueless as to what lay up there north of Mexico. I mean, actually, north of Mexico City. They call it El Norte Misterioso, the mysterious north. And it was literally a giant blank spot on European maps. And so now maybe we have our first audio visual aid. So if I don't have the cursor, but if you see, you can see Florida and the East Coast, and there's the Caribbean with all those islands named down there, and then there's Mexico. But now go north of Mexico, and you see those two figures, and see where the cursor is. That's complete blankness. The Europeans have no idea. This map was made in 1544 by Sebastian Cabot, who is an explorer and cartographer. And then they don't even know where China and India is. They keep thinking China and India is like attached to what's now the U.S., North America. So okay, we can move beyond the map. And so that's how they launch in the spring of 1540. And then 2 years later, the remnants of the expedition come back to Mexico City, and it's like 100 or so soldiers stumbling along, and they're carrying Coronado on a litter. And he's literally a broken man, physically and psychologically. And they hadn't found the seven cities of gold. They'd found some mud huts in Kansas. And therein lies the story of this book. And a few things particularly fascinated me. That there's one dimension I'm really fascinated with. That Coronado came to the New World to make a name for himself, and he quickly married a 12-year-old daughter of one of New Spain's most prominent families. And it was with her money, her considerable money, that he funded the expedition. And he had an iron-willed businesswoman of a mother-in-law. So there are these female dynamics in Mexico City as he launches off. And you could say he was really feeling the pressure to come back with vast riches. So then after 6 months, he arrived at what today are the Zuni pueblos of New Mexico, seven of them, the rumored seven cities. And, he announces that to the Zunis, either you submit to the king and queen of Spain and accept our religion, or we kill you. Of course, the Zunis resisted. There's a battle. Coronado gets slammed on the gilded helmet by boulders. But they eventually come to terms. And the Zunis say to Coronado, oh, so it's gold you're looking for. Well, we don't have any gold here, but we know where you can find it. You just go that way and keep going. So Coronado and the other reconnaissance parties he sends out, his expedition scored many of the first as European explorers of North America. They were the first Europeans to see the Grand Canyon, the first to see the Rocky Mountains, the first to see the Great Plains and its massive herd of buffalo. And they were first European contact with myriad Indian tribes and giving us our first description. So they traveled for nearly 2 years to the Northeast. So now we can have our next audio visual aid. And yes, there we go. Good. And you can see their route from Mexico City way down in the south, and they go up kind of up the west coast of Mexico, and then they start cutting northeast. That's where the Zunis said, just hey, head that way, that you'll find the gold. And they keep going. The golden land of Quivira is where they're headed, and they're getting close to St. Louis. They're almost to Iowa. And what they don't find gold. So we can take that down. They don't find gold, but they find these beautiful fertile lands, which is of equal interest. And then it's at this point Coronado falls off his horse, during a horse race, gets kicked in the head by a hoof, goes into a coma. And I'm totally convinced he suffers traumatic brain injury. I mean, he has all the symptoms. And when he finally comes to consciousness, he's just a changed guy. And from this point forward, he only wants to return to Mexico City and die in the arms of his beloved Beatrice. But he's got this problem. How do you turn around a 2,000 person expedition chomping to find the seven cities of gold and fertile lands to grow rich? So anyway, the story goes on with all its craziness, um, but these events have pretty profound historical significance. But the Puebloans succeeded in blocking any serious Spanish colonization of North America, anything north of Mexico, and they did it due to the resilience of their native cultures, the kind of non-hierarchical nature of the Puebloan cultures. And they were sort of woven together like this giant net that Coronado couldn't destroy. And they used their cooperation, their wiles, their military strategy to really mess him up. And they knew how to live in these harsh and difficult landscapes. So in a way, this was the fight that the Indians won. And 300 years later, when the U.S. started pushing westward with Manifest Destiny in the 1800s, there was barely a Spanish presence to stop them. So the U.S. westward push ended up racing to the West Coast, and it sort of left the Puebloan cultures largely intact. It's almost like a river's current swirling around a set of boulders in the middle of the stream. And so they're amazingly intact today, really beautiful cultures, very resilient. So that's the story basically, and I hope it appeals to all ages or many ages. I think my books do. Um, but I had a really touching experience about a month ago. I was giving a talk in Virginia, and afterwards, a 12-year-old boy came up to me with a big stack of my books, and he wanted me to sign them all. And his father said he had a passion for history, and he really loved my books, and so that was the most. I'm so pleased to hear that. But that's what we have here.
Oh, that was really great. And there's so much packed into this. And for something that happened how long ago, I was like, oh, what happens next? I love narrative nonfiction where you're learning so much. And a feat to you to pack it all in there, but just in a way that flows and you learn something while you're just being kind of entertained in the same way. But I think that this book, and I'm so glad you're connecting with librarians today, because I'm getting a lot of conversations from librarians saying, 250th anniversary of the US is next year. What can we talk about that's new history or rethinking history? And I think this book is going to be perfect for those book clubs, going back and talking about something maybe they don't know as much about, or the start of the so-called, claiming of the US. But yeah, I think it's going to be great for that.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it is, and I hope it engages readers on a sort of deeper. I mean, both fun. I think it's a fun read. I mean, it was really fun to write, and when something's fun to write, I feel good about that. So I think it's fun to read, and so I hope it engages readers on that level, but also this deeper view of looking at the continent and the European empires coming here and all these dynamics that we really don't think about. I mean, we know 1776, and there was a whole lot that came before that I think it's really important to understand.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see you soon. Back to Grace.
Thank you, Lainey. I'm excited to welcome on Gillian McAllister. So hello, Gillian.
Hi.
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 I would
I
say
hope you can all
welcome, but
hear
I'm gonna
me.
say welcome back because you've been on here with us before, um, for Famous Last Words, and I went and double checked. I was like, that feels like yesterday, but also a year ago, and it was last October, so end of October too. So it's been like a
Yeah.
full year, and it's great to see you.
I know. It doesn't feel like a minute, does it? That's bizarre. And here I am again. It is 20 to midnight here. So I'm like kind of winding down for bed with a load of librarians, which feels very apt. I feel like you guys are great at bedtime.
Perfect. And thank you for staying up for us. We really, really appreciate it. We know it's not an ideal time for our friends in the UK and around the world. So thank you for being here.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm always up at this hour. So no, it's absolutely fine.
I get it. So we're going to be talking about Color Unknown, which is on sale May 5th. I'm going to read a short bio about you, but first I wanted to say this book gave me the best level of anxiety.
I love that.
I was so anxious and I just could not stop reading because I was like, I have to know what is going to happen. And it just gave me all these feelings of like, what would I do? What do I do now that I'm reading it and I'm like feeling all these things? So thank you for writing
Wow.
this.
That's amazing. Was it the bit on the bus? That's the what I'm hearing from like very early readers. That's the most anxiety inducing part.
Yes, because it kind of like, when you've ever been like through TSA and you're not doing anything wrong, but you're like going through
Yeah.
customs and you're like, what if something really crazy was gonna happen? And I know nothing's gonna happen, but like, what if it happened? I'm trying to like talk about this without spoiling anything.
I know.
But yes, the bus bit definitely got me. So quick little bit about your bio. Gillian McAllister is a New York Times bestselling author of the Reese's Book Club pick, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, Famous Last Words, Just Another Missing Person, and more. She graduated with an English degree before working as a lawyer. She lives in Birmingham, England, where she now writes full time. She is also the creator and co-host of the popular Honest Authors podcast. So thank you for being here, and I will let you talk about Caller Unknown.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So here it is, a proof. Call It Unknown is coming out in May next year. It is my 10th published novel over here at least. And I guess somebody recently in the press described me as restless in the genre, and I took it as a compliment. I chose to take it as a compliment after some introspection. And I think it's actually very accurate because I have really enjoyed over my career to start to feel the edges of the thriller genre and where they might be. And it's actually a really vast genre, I've written a time travel thriller, Wrong Place, Wrong Time. I've written a hostage situation, Famous Last Words, which was this year's book. And in Call It Unknown, I really wanted to write a classic suspense novel that just kind of goes off like a rocket from page one. And I'd never really done that before. And I started to think about kind of tropes in the same way that, romance readers think about tropes. I started to think about them in thrillers, and I started to think kind of nobody really does that in the thriller world, and why is that? And I started to think about a ransom as a trope, a simple old-fashioned almost demand to get something you want. And I started to play with it, and I suddenly thought, well, what if the ransom to get back a missing teenager, isn't money, it's a task? And what if the person ransomed is the most dangerous person in the world, which is a parent? And a parent as a protagonist is such a loose cannon because the relationship, parent to child, is so irrational. And I found it so interesting to write a mother who kind of does a deal with the devil to get her child back. And you, as a reader, I think the suspense in so many ways comes from thinking, oh God, like, what is she going to do next? Like, I'm not sure I would do that, but I do understand it. And that is sort of where the nascent idea for Call It Unknown came from. The very notion of like, you receive a task from a kidnapper and you want to do it and you want to meet them directly and not involve the police, and your husband wants to just do it by the book. And it's also therefore about the marital decision that kind of takes place at that juncture. And I really wanted to toy with the idea of kind of inverting the genre in other ways. So, without giving away too many spoilers, I didn't want the whole novel to be about getting the child back. I kind of didn't want it to be like a romp where you kind of know she's going to get the child back. So at 30% through, a real curveball happens, and the novel becomes about something perhaps completely different. And it's peril in a completely different sense. And that's what I kind of really love to do, is to think, what would it be like to write a novel where I kind of resolve the hook, and then, you know, we go someplace even more interesting from that point. And that was the springboard to really talk about the kind of underlying themes in the novel, which it's really about letting go of your adult child. Even if I'm using kidnap as an allegory to kind of talk about that, it's really about the notion of an empty nest and who you are after parenthood has kind of taken a lot from you, and how you kind of navigate that next stage of your relationship. So I hope Caller Unknown kind of works on more than one level in that sense. And yeah, I really hope you enjoy it. And thanks so much for your amazing support. It's just incredible to kind of have people on the ground that are professional readers. Like, I can't believe such a thing exists. And, you know, your job is to just recommend us to our readers and find them for us. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, again, this is a book that really just makes you feel like, would I do that? Would I not do it? And I think it's interesting for everyone to read, whether or not they're a parent, because you know, everyone's someone's child. So I think it really is relatable to a lot of readers. And yeah, you it's some major curveballs in there. I was again very wonderfully anxious throughout. So we wanted to read a quote from Lisa Jewell, who says, "Gillian McAllister has done it again. This is such a clever, tense, and twisty book. I inhaled it in under a day. The pacing is perfection, and the twist is deeply satisfying. But it is the characters that elevate Gillian's books into the best of the best, and the family dynamics are so richly described, it's hard to believe that they don't continue after the book ends." So I just wanted to call that out. And you've also gotten a lot of love in the chat. Someone said that they read this in one sitting. So I just wanted to say people are loving it. So thank you. And I'm gonna invite everybody back on.
This has been so great. Welcome back, everyone. How are we doing? Everybody's good?
I
Okay.
have to say to Cynthia, I was just in Rochester a couple weeks ago, and I loved it. I loved the people, and I saw my first groundhog. So
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a
exciting.
great city. It's a great city.
I thought, is that a capybara? What is that thing?
I love that.
And I love that you brought up like white hot dogs. If you have not, if you eat meat and the next time you're in Rochester, you have to get one.
I
'cause it's
know you have.
impossible to describe it.
I don't know if I can recommend it, but I can definitely recommend a Zweigel's hot dog. But yeah.
That started a conversation on the team of what the difference between red and white, and then we were like, let's not Google that. I don't know that we need to.
I actually think the white one is really a bratwurst. But
okay, that's helpful.
I was
yeah,
going to
but
ask,
maybe I don't want
are
to dig
they?
too deep
Like, what
either.
are they made of?
So I
love that. Well, we have some questions in the chat. Oh, Peter, are you?
I'm here on video, on audio, but my video is saying the host won't let me in.
Oh no.
Grace, let Peter
I'm
in.
so sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes
Unprompted.
it gets stuck in the background.
Oh,
There we
okay,
go.
got it. Okay.
Welcome.
Thanks
I thought
for letting us know.
I got thrown out.
No, not throwing out tonight. Okay, let's start, I guess, back the way we started. So, Claire, someone in the chat was asking, because you talked about adding kind of your own experiences, and they wanted to know if that was cathartic for you to kind of work out some of you kind of drew on some of your own experiences while writing this book. And so if that's cathartic, does it help when you kind of control the ending at the end of what your characters do?
Yes, that part was great. And because it's fiction, I don't have to be fair. I can just say, oh, he got his just desserts. So I enjoyed that. And I have to say, I had never written about this before. A lot of these experiences I just kind of put behind me And it was great to take the opportunity. There's a scene about a wedding night that is exactly what happened to me. And yeah, it's in this kind of lighthearted book, but I think it maybe hopefully adds a layer or two to the story. And it definitely was great for me to write about.
And then we have, let's see, I think Grace has a question for Cynthia.
Yeah, I like gave you kind of a prep about the title question. I think if you're from any lake area, particularly the Great Lakes, you'll be like, oh, lake effect, of course. But for those who are not in that little bubble of the United States, can you talk about the significance of the title and how it connected to the novel? And also, was this always the title for you?
It was always the title for me. It was not always the title for the people, my team. There are a lot of other books called Lake Effect or The Lake Effect. And I, very early on, thought about Lake Effect as a title because, as you know, Grace, all anyone talks about is the weather. Rochester is routinely listed as one of the 3 least sunny places in the country, ordinarily somewhere in the mix with Portland and Seattle. And although Syracuse, I think, is a little worse most of the time. But yeah, if you're living on a lake, if you're living on a Great Lake, the weather is so unpredictable. And my birthday is in August, and every year we'd plan an outdoor party, and it didn't matter if the days dawned sunny and bright. Within 20 minutes, a squall could come in and it would be cloudy and rainy. And I got to the point where I could sort of go out in our backyard and figure out which way thought I could figure out which way the clouds are blowing. But it really does, between the weirdness of Rochester being a place that doesn't get as much snow as Syracuse and Buffalo, but is always confused with their snowfall amounts. And then just, it's cloudy all the time. And when I moved to New York City, I remember sort of this delirium during the summer of it's sunny here, like many days a week. And so I loved that title as a metaphor for the unpredictability of, the winds that blow through our lives and change things. And my publishing team very responsibly said there are too many books already called Lake Effect, and this could, I don't know, it could screw up the algorithm or something. And I said, all right, well, let's table that discussion. And I just wrote the book as if the title was going to be Lake Effect. And when I handed in the final draft, my wonderful editor, Helen, texted me and said, I think you're right, the title is Lake Effect. So that was a happy ending for all of us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And someone in the chat said, I'm from Chicago, so I get it.
Yes, no, it's like, it's literally all anyone talks about, and it's lamely offered as an excuse all the time when you're disappointed about the weather. It's like, well, it's, Lake Effect. And as a kid, I was like, what is it? What is it?
It's like the trains in New York. You can just blame everything on the trains.
Exactly.
In the city. And I think it's so funny you said that about like the title, because we're in meetings a lot where people are like, what the title, like, I don't know. And then you read something, you're like, no, this has to be the title.
Yeah.
It has to be the title.
I know, that was kind of my hope. I just thought if I believe it's the title, it's going to, if at the end of reading the final draft, Helen and my agent, my wonderful agent Henry, don't think this is the title, then it's not. Then we'll come up with something else, but I'm gonna kind of go for it. So.
Love it. Okay, Peter, we have a question. How do you begin researching a part of history that may have not had a lot of information written down? So you can talk about that. How much of the story comes from you working through the bits and pieces?
Oh, that's a good question. And it's a labyrinthine question because that's the way it feels like doing this kind of research. And you know, in a way, that the last part of that question is right, is very apt. A lot of it comes in bits and pieces, and then it's a matter of kind of stitching those together, becoming familiar enough with them, so you see the arc of the story, and it's almost like you have to immerse yourself in the material, and it's way easier now with online archives. And I wrote a book some years ago about young George Washington as kind of a mess of a guy in the woods and in his 20s. And I didn't really understand him as a character until I read about hundreds of his letters. And then I could understand what was going on. And likewise with this Coronado book, um, that there's so many accounts that because it was an official Spanish expedition, there are all these guys keeping accounts, and Coronado writing letters to the king and to his viceroy, and then surprise, they got busted for abusing the Indians, and there was a big interrogation in Mexico City. So then, they're just pages and pages of testimony of eyewitness accounts, and so it's that was one of the things I look for when I choose a topic, is that there's a lot of existing material. But I did spend some really fun times in the kind of dungeon-like archives of Mexico City and found some cool stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised at how much information we do have, like what they carried and things like this. I found that fascinating. And also, I just want to point out, you mentioned in the book that a lot of the women's stories who were on this expedition are not recorded, but you found a way to bring a lot of female stories into this book, ones that, yeah, I was very fascinated by. So,
And I love that part of the story, the Beatrice, and that
yeah,
like she turned the thing around and
yeah.
she paid for it, and then she ended up turning it around.
Leave it to, that's all I'll say.
Yeah,
Get it
yeah.
done.
Gillian, people are wondering what made you decide to set this book in the United States and Texas specifically, and have you traveled to Texas before?
Well, it was really born out of two kind of impulses. The first was the feeling of, if somebody kidnaps your teenage child and you're not in your home country, I think that you're more likely to maybe take matters into your own hands, because you just don't know how the legal system works in another country. And I had, I'd set so many books in England, and I had such a desire to kind of spread my wings. And I had this image of the mother and daughter together in the Texan desert. And there's a sort of handover moment in the novel. And I always had that scene in my head. And I learned so many things about Texas, and like how there's more like dramatic clouds, for example. Talking of cloud cover, there's not so many not so much cloud cover in Texas, I would imagine, but the clouds look different there because of the atmosphere, and the stars are so much more visible. And I really wanted this kind of fierce heat and then fierce cold at night, and this kind of expansive environment. And the second reason was a purely pragmatic thing of what the ransom is. It's a task, and it needed a border with Mexico. And I started kind of plotting it out, because I had been to Mexico years ago and I sort of knew bits of it. And I was suddenly, Texas just kind of jumped out at me, particularly the Big Bend region. And it's been so interesting to kind of learn about it. So yeah, that's why it was a fun year writing my book set in Texas. I'm back in rainy England now for my next novel.
So cool. Lainey, do we?
I do think it's very funny that in the official question box, Sylvia said, how many outdoor birthday parties have you had since moving to New York City? Lots, I hope. That's an official question for you. Of all the sunny.
No, listen, when your birthday's in August, nobody's around. So that's
Same.
that is my burden to bear.
Yeah,
Well,
mine's in
actually, it's my
August.
husband's burden to bear.
Always at school. We
Yeah.
like started and then or ended. It never worked out. Like at school, I never got the
no,
August.
it just doesn't work out. It just
I
doesn't
feel
work.
your pain.
Yeah.
All right. I think we just have a lot of great comments, really, and everyone's saying how much they're enjoying this and how much they have either loved the read or can't wait to dip in. And this has been a really great hour. I think we'll just end by asking the question that always comes up in what are you reading? And, you know, just a title or two. It can be if you're like, I don't know, excited for something you read a while ago, that's fine too. But Grace is going to, as quick as I've ever seen anyone ever type, put this into a catalog for them. So whatever you mention, librarians, don't worry, you're gonna have a catalog of all the books. So I think we'll just go around. Gillian, you're the first one I see, so I'll go to you.
I recently read The Death of Us by Abigail Dean. She wrote Girl A, and it's sublime. It's about the aftermath of a home invasion, but by a serial killer. So he routinely lets himself into people's houses, and he doesn't kill the protagonists, and they survive, but their marriage doesn't. And it's years later, a kind of his trial, he's eventually caught, but it's really an exploration of how something like that might affect a marriage. And it's hard to believe that she hasn't experienced it because it's so visceral the way she writes it. So yeah, The Death of Us by Abigail Dean, it's fantastic.
Okay, Peter, you're next on my screen.
So this is one that's untitled. Well, it is titled, but it's unpublished. It's my wife's manuscript of a novel. So Amy Ragsdale, and so she's had one published book about memoirs in Brazil, our year in Brazil called Crossing the River, and now she's working on a more kind of domestically set novel. And the other thing that I've read that is published that's in connection with her father, my father-in-law Wilmot Ragsdale was a war correspondent for Time Life in London, based in London during World War II. And so, and I read narrative nonfiction, Eric Larson's, it's called The Splendid and the Vile, which it took me a bit to get into it, but once I did, it was really interesting to read about the Blitz, the Nazi Blitz on London in 1940, and Churchill's like begging the U.S. to get involved, and it's very tense.
Cynthia?
I happen to be I recently moved, so I happen to be unpacking books today. So, and this is one that I read a few months ago, The Names by Florence Knapp, which is such a ingenious conceit for a book. I was immediately jealous of it. It follows a woman as she wants to name her child. Her husband wants to name their second child, one thing. Her daughter wants to name the child another name, and she has another name. And the plot line follows as if the child had been named each different name through the years and what happens to the family depending on the names. And it is so gorgeously written and dark in a way that I love and hopeful in a way that I love. And I think about it all the time. And then my friend Asia Gable has a book out today called The Light Breakers. And I'm about almost halfway through it. And it's such a cool book. I'm a sucker for time travel, so I'm going to find Gillian's book immediately. And it's about time travel and science and marriage and grief and loss. And she's a beautiful writer, so she manages to render these very heady subjects like quantum physics, and in a way that feels completely accessible to the layperson. And it's, you know, at its heart, of course, just really about human relationships and family. And I can't recommend it highly enough.
Love that. Claire?
I very recently had the opportunity to interview Jeff Vandermeer for a book event. And to get ready for that, I really, really immersed myself in the Area X novels. They were a reread for me. And wow, they really, really, they are worth reading again. It was like reading a completely different set of novels. And I think they're good to recommend to people that are looking for something really different, and also for people that like nature writing, because there's some extraordinary descriptions of nature and evolutionary wildness in those books. I really enjoyed revisiting them and meeting Jeff Vandermeer.
This has been lovely. I can't believe we're already done. I could talk some more, but is there anything anyone wants to add that we didn't cover? Feel free to jump in. If so, I don't want to miss anything.
Just a big thank you from me. It's been so enjoyable hearing everybody's about everyone's books.
Same.
Lots of love.
Likewise, it's I feel like I'm meeting new friends and eager to read books. So thank you all, and thank the librarians too for tuning in.
Yeah, one of the best parts about writing is meeting other writers and hearing about their books and getting to know their work. So this is just also really fun for me.
I can't tell you how much of a joy it was reading everyone's books. I feel like I said, there's something here for everyone. It's great, and there's some ties kind of in here as well. I told Grace several of these books are about, you know, who gets to tell the story, whose opinion matters, or whose historical thoughts are told. So I think that we have a lot of ties here and a lot of great books for people to jump into. I'm just going to read the on sale dates one more time. So we have Evil Genius, February 17th, Lake Effect, March 3rd, Velocities of El Norte, April 14th, and Caller Unknown, May 5th. And I'm gonna just put everybody's jackets back up here. They are gorgeous. We have a lot of people in the chat just saying how much they've enjoyed this. And here's all of the jackets. A reminder, we have Gala Gab Fest coming back November 19th. It's just myself and Grace chilling, hanging, telling you about some books. And you can come hear from us. And then our next event is December 4th with all of these wonderful authors. So we'll see you there. I wish we could keep going, but we're already at time. So thank you and have a good night.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks so much.